Good morning, man. What's up? And welcome to the show. Welcome to No Apologies, Please. I'm your host, Greg Meriweather, man. It's an exciting day. I'm excited about the guest we have on today. It's my guy, my brother. I've been knowing him for quite some time, man. I mean, I've been a student of his at times. I just, for some odd reason, I was better at playing the trumpet than I was at playing the piano. So nonetheless, this brother, man, he's the ultimate Renaissance man. This guy, he's an author. He's a counselor. He's a coach. He's a therapist. Man, this guy does it all, man. And I commend people who can do work like this on a regular basis and not understand what it means to be extremely busy. And so, man, without further ado, man, I want to bring this guy on so we can just start chopping it up. This is my brother, none other than George Middleton. What's up, my brother?
Gee,
How's
what's
it?
happening, man?
Hey, man, we both getting real gray.
You know what, man? Can't fight it anymore. Can't fight it. What it is, it's going to be.
What it is going to be. So what's been going on?
Well, man, you have your finger on the thumb on the pulse of what's going on. I mean, I'm really enjoying watching you and following you and marinating in your passion.
Thank you, brother.
You're strong and unapologetic, and I really resonate with the title of your program.
Yes, sir.
And this is the year to either be in it, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem.
That's real talk.
There's no in-betweens right now, man.
No in between, man. It's pretty rough. When we think about just the temperature of how everything is going right now, it's crazy. It's almost like for lack of better terms, a perfect storm. You've got politics out of shape. You got the church out of shape. Our communities in trouble. You've got mental health is so out there. I mean, it's just a lot of different things, a lot of different angles. And you're absolutely right. Either you're part of the problem or part of the solution. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, man. Wholeheartedly.
And mental health, fortunately, is starting to take more of an importance in the framework of society.
Yeah.
I always like to make the stipulation for those that may not be aware that there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. And oftentimes, especially as it pertains to our community, we look at the negative aspects of mental health. But just like you have to go somewhere to work on your physical health, you need a place to go for you to work on your mental health.
Yeah.
Because living is a full contact sport.
Man, say that again.
Yeah.
Living is a full contact sport. That's real. I always say this, G. I say, getting up and trying this thing on every single day is a task in itself. And, I don't even think, when you get to a point where it's such a routine and it's like I don't want to say we do a good job at it, but for some odd reason, we're able to block out a lot of the stuff that we probably shouldn't block out. How do we go about, man, starting to really become, analysts of self, to be able to say, you know what, I don't, here, I'm going to say this before you answer this. We're the people who say, good morning, brother G. How's it going? I'm blessed. Yes. I'm blessed. I'm blessed and highly favored, but I'll be honest with you. I'm a person to be like, how you doing today? I'll be like, terrible. But what do we do, man, to really start, bridging that gap and allowing us to be transparent with what it is that we're feeling in those moments and times?
Yes. And, you frame that context well, because most of us are waking up on automatic pilot. That's part of our survival mechanism. Is we have to store information quickly into places where it does the work without our conscious involvement, because we just need stuff to happen. If we were consciously aware of every decision we had to make, we'd be tired by 6:05. Wake up at 6 o'clock, and by 6:05 we're right back in bed, because just the decisions it takes to get out of bed can exhaust you if you're doing it on a conscious level.
Yeah.
What I like to do, and why that's important, is because thinking is getting a bad name for some reason.
Okay.
People will often confuse mental activity for thinking. Just having a lot of stuff running through your mind, that's not thinking.
Sure.
Thinking is intentional. And if you've really taken some time to think about something, that's almost like a good workout. It's like going to the gym and working out if you've really thought about something.
Mm.
And that's why I appreciate platforms like this, because I consider you a thought leader.
Thank you.
And, when I watch your stuff, you make me think. And dog, I've sweated out. I got to go work, take a shower and everything because you done worked me out. That's how it's supposed to be.
Sure.
You're supposed to challenge your thought, because that challenge is what makes the muscle of the brain, the muscle of the mind stronger. But we don't challenge. We like to stay comfortable and put things in their boxes and let the boxes do what they do, so we can just get through the day and do what we have to do. And it's not working for us. So it's time to really start thinking. So I would like to say too, from a mental health perspective, on discussions like these, I would ask people, I do a lot of presenting,
Mm-hmm.
and I ask people, when we're having thought-provoking discussions, try to resist the natural urge to look for agreement or disagreement.
Yes.
Because when I'm speaking, I'm not looking for, oh, I agree or I disagree.
Right.
Not that you don't have to say it, but if you say that too quickly, that tells me that you really didn't think.
Mm-hmm.
You're just looking for things that confirm or conflict with what your narrative is. This is about thinking. So I'm asking people, because hopefully today we will talk about some things that I want to share some information that most people aren't aware of, that they're not knowledgeable about.
Sure.
And more importantly, they're not operating by it.
Mm.
So you can agree with stuff, but there's a good chance that the stuff you're agreeing with isn't factually accurate.
Oh man. That's one of our biggest issues. We have a lot of thought. It's almost that thing. It's like when everybody is thinking alike, no one is thinking. You find a lot of times where people go, you know what I mean?
That's a t-shirt, bro.
You hear me? So if everybody's thinking alike, nobody's thinking. It's interesting because, most of the times, when I have disagreements, it's pretty much my research versus what's believed. And
Right.
and a lot of people will passionately fight for what they believe as opposed to what's real.
Yes.
And it's amazing. There's a sister, Latava. She says, man, Meriweather, she says it's like you're probably dealing with 5%. She said 5 to 10% of the people that you're actually dealing with. She's like, most of the people either need to be revived or they're the walking dead. And she says, so brother, it's a huge challenge because changing, going back to my cousin in Chicago, may rest. He said, find it. He said, don't be an ambulance chaser. Don't chase money. He said, find the nucleus of the problem for our people and then fix that. He's like, if you can help change the minds of our people, bro, he said, you'll never have to worry about nothing else. And I think that, the sad part about it, George, is you've got so much information that's false.
Yes.
How do we fight that narrative? How do we get ahead of that? And especially when, we're not coming to sit down and have these conversations like this. We typically don't have a lot of stimulating conversations.
Mm-hmm.
How do we fight the all the illness that's being implemented into the minds of our people? How do we fight those?
Well, going back to your earlier statement in doing your research and how that conflicts with people's belief systems, it starts there. In my line of work, challenging somebody's thinking is by proximity challenging people's belief systems.
Heck yeah.
And people will come out of different, based on their mindset, based on how secure or insecure they are. They can come from respond in a myriad of ways to that challenge. More secure people will be able to like, that's interesting, Greg. Tell me more. Mm-hmm. The insecure person who's like, oh, what's he saying? It may attack you, or And when I say these things, it's not to disparage anybody.
Sure.
I'm coming from a mental health perspective. Everything I come from is a mental health perspective. But when you're challenging belief systems, often it's said, when you know better, you do better.
That's what they say.
That's what they say. But in my line of work, I know better. That's not true. Because what really trumps that statement is beliefs are more powerful than facts.
Mm.
And so now, if you are a leader in any type of system, it's not enough to just have the facts.
Okay.
You have to have the ability to convey them in a way that dispels the least amount of resistance.
Mm.
And so there's an old cliche that I try to go by a lot. You can either be right or you can be effective.
Mm-hmm.
But most times you can't be both.
Okay.
And most of us are trying to be right. We're trying to win the argument. We're trying to win the fight. And
True.
walk away feeling like, okay, I showed him, but nothing was improved in terms of the actual situation.
Yeah. The effectiveness.
So that's the first thing is, in order to address the problems that we see in front of us, we are going to have to get ourselves out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And often mastery and control of self, that's the first aspect of mental health. How well can you control yourself?
Right.
I tell the kids in the mentoring classes that I do, I ask them a question: what is the most hardest thing to control?
What's that?
And they automatically say yourself.
Real.
That's it. And I've lived some years, and I'm still working on disciplining myself. I'm
Yeah.
still working on controlling myself, because it's a journey, not a destination.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
when you reach one level of achievement, that's just to set you up for the next level of challenge, to expand your self-awareness, to expand your self-control, to expand your self-discipline.
Yeah.
And those are the things that uh, are the foundation blocks of good, strong mental health.
Yeah. You know, here's some things though, G, when I look at this, it says the statistics tell us that about 25% of blacks seek mental health treatment in comparison to 40% of white Americans. What do you think the disparity is behind that?
So this is huge. This is really important. And I try to yell this from the mountaintops anytime I get a chance to be on somebody's platform. Most people don't know it. Some do, but most people don't realize it. This is serious, what I'm getting ready to say.
Mm-hmm.
The number one stressor to the American African community is racism.
Agreed.
And this is not a personal opinion. And I want to let you know, and listeners know, that I don't come from any ideology, religious or political. I don't come from opinions, personal. I only deal in objective information. And it is a fact that racism across the country, including here in Indianapolis, is officially declared by every major medical and psychological association to be a public health crisis.
Agreed.
Now, there's a cognitive dissonance with that,
Share it with us.
because you can relate to COVID being a public health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But what does it mean racism is a public health crisis? And especially when you have a community where you have a significant part of our community and community leaders who aren't even in agreement that racism even exists.
That's facts. Seriously facts.
Right. Now, a public health crisis it requires a 3-stage intervention process:
Mm-hmm.
prevention, mitigation, and repair.
Okay.
So, how do you prevent racism? How do you mitigate racism? And how do you repair the damage of racism if it is truly a public health crisis, which it is in every statistical measure of every system of service quality of life system? You can't mask yourself from racism. You can't social distance yourself from racism. And there is no known vaccine for racism. So I always ask leaders in communities, do you have a public health intervention strategy for racism within your organization? If you don't, then you're contributing to it.
Ooh, how long does that conversation last?
Oh, well, I mean, this is the work that I do. You know,
Okay.
I'm building a collaborative of like-minded leaders and with organizations to address this very issue. Since the George Floyd scenario,
Sure.
It created a shift in consciousness, and people were like, "Wow, this is just ridiculous." Once you see it in your face, and you know, it was two different types of responses. For those who identify as Black, it was nothing new.
Nothing new.
It was nothing new. Okay, it was just adding more to our confirmation of where we stand in the hierarchy of society.
Okay.
For those who identify as white, a lot of them, it was just shocking.
Total shock and awe.
Yeah. And I got a lot of calls, George, what do we do? What do we do? You know, blah, 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 you know. And, you know, I that's when I really went to work with the platform that I'm doing. But a lot of organizations have doubled down on diversity, equity, inclusion. And diversity, equity, inclusion is good at what it does, but it is not good or effective at addressing race.
Preach on it.
Diversity and race are not the same. And you can't take a diversity tool to fix a racial problem.
Gotcha.
And that's the disconnect. And that's why DEI is taking the hit that it's taken. And, you know, if there are any DEI people on here, I'm not saying this to disparage it. I've really been trying to cultivate a relationship with professionals in that environment. But it hasn't worked. It hasn't been very fruitful because I'm coming from a totally different perspective. You know, the DEI business, it's a $1 billion a year industry.
It is.
But if you look at the statistics, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to disparage because DEI is important. And I'm not saying what you do. It's important.
If it's done correct, it's important, but it needs to be done correctly.
It needs to be done correctly. And if you look at the statistics, it is not effective in the areas of racial inequality. It's not. And actually, if you look at the research, in many situations, immediately or sometime after the training, racial tensions have been exacerbated as a result of the training.
Agreed. You know, when you think about it, you know, I'll be honest with you. One of the things that really disturbed me, and this is, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, is when I look and, you know, I've seen diversity champions and diversity awards.
Yes.
And George, when I see that Black people are, you know, last in housing and last in median household income and last in employment, first fired, last hired. You don't see a lot of Black people, you know, in positions of power, corporate America. You don't see us in a lot of the C-suites when it comes down to even having the potential to hire someone. You know, you don't get to sit across from us most times to be hired. And so when I see us celebrating as if diversity is working, it draws concern for me.
Yeah. And again, diversity is working in the areas that it's supposed to be working in.
But not in areas of race.
But as it pertains, and that's the tension that we're getting. And again, that is why diversity is getting kicked in the butt right now and being vulnerable to being put out of organizations and schools and all that, because the average DEI professional is not adequately equipped on the facts of race.
That's real.
And what they don't understand is that you have a partisan ideology that is manipulating the society at large by using race to undercut diversity and equity and inclusion. If the average DEI professional was fully informed about what race really is, they would know how to counteract that. But they don't. So now they're running scared. So now what DEI is doing is they're trying to do the same service, but changing their name. They're kind of trying to morph into something different so that it doesn't look like DEI. You know, if you are a professional and you're educated, you don't operate in fear.
It's real.
You know, if you know your stuff and somebody who's got a manipulative agenda comes to you, I'm not running from you. I'm using my knowledge to let you know, no, bro, no, that's not flying here. There is no critical race theory being taught K through 12. Fact.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, let me ask you, do you know what critical race theory is? Do you know the difference between critical race theory and race? I mean, I'm going to start challenging their knowledge base. But because you don't know, so I'm including educators in this as well, because educators are getting hit with this as well. Because you're not educated factually. Remember, racism is a public health crisis.
Absolutely.
So you need to be educated about what the crisis is. Agreed. And we are not.
You know, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. You know, race is a public health crisis. You know, the sad thing about, you know, when I look at, you know, just as we deal with racism, DEI, most of the people, you know, they did a great job because they didn't want to bring in most of these organizations, most of these big organizations or companies did not want to bring in outside people. They controlled the voices. They controlled the voices of actually creating that thing that talks about race. They controlled it because they didn't want to bring people in who were actually professionals in it. They actually elevated people who were inside so that they can control the narrative. So when you look, you find people who were in position that never would ever talk about race.
Right.
Then they got promoted into a position that they would still never talk about race, but they carried the title heavy.
Yes.
But these companies know that when it's all said and done, I've got an individual who I know is not going to say anything, but at least we can say we have the Band-Aid in place.
We checked the box.
We checked the total box. So with healthcare, man, you know, unequal access to healthcare is a major contributor to us not really getting a lot of treatment. It says nearly 10% of Blacks don't have health insurance compared to 5.2% of non-Hispanic whites. So it's like, you know, there's a humongous disparity as relates to us even being able to get mental health treatment. And then when you realize that 1 in 3 Black adults with mental illness receive treatment. So 1 in 3 will receive treatment. So when we look at those disparities, man, and we look at just the healthcare disparity and the fact that 1 in 3 will receive treatment, how do we move forward with us getting that type of access so that we can do what you're saying and get that mental workout so that we can be healthy in the mind?
Well, are you familiar with the concept of triage?
Yes.
So triage is when you are assessing the urgency of the need for treatment. You're assessing patients or casualties to determine their urgency or the need for treatment and the nature of the treatment required. So again, I'm framing this response in racism as the public health crisis.
Sure.
Right now, that the American African population is the most urgent population in need of treatment. So, you know, whenever I used to be a firefighter. So whenever we arrived on a scene, we would address the most urgent people first, right? Take care and then move accordingly.
Correct.
We're not being addressed.
Totally.
Our community is not being addressed. So what you're speaking to with health in the health system, the same dynamic is being demonstrated in every other system of service. So it's a twofold problem. First is access. And then when you do get in, it's treatment. How are you being treated? So access refers to the systemic nature. And so in most situations, whether it's school, whether it's public health and safety, whether it's health, you pick the system of service. Most of us are systemically hindered from full access to these services.
Correct.
So that's one thing. Now, once you get in, and this is all research-based, fact-based, once you get in, you have to deal with what's called provider bias.
Okay.
And that means that based on the color of your skin will determine the quality of treatment that you receive. These are facts.
These are facts.
So it's a systemic piece and it's a bias piece.
Yeah.
And they work together. If I can keep you out, I'm going to keep you out. But if you get in, then you got to go through these bias hoops.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get full access to the qualities and services someone with a different skin tone will. And when I say this, often people are thinking, well, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. My work is not to address the intentional racist. As a matter of fact, I have the highest, utmost respect for intentional racists. For those
Me too. Absolutely.
For those
Give me mine raw.
hey, dog, look at me. Because in America, you have the God-given right to like or not like anyone or anything based on any reason you desire.
That's real.
That's the American way.
That's real.
What you don't have the right to do, though, is take your dislike and put it in systems of service.
Right.
That's the problem. And people are looking for that intentional KKK Confederate flag waving person who says, I don't like you because of how you look. No, that person is the least of our problems.
Yeah.
The everyday problem is the average moral-based, Christian-based person who really wants to do well and treat his client right, but at the end of the day finds that he did not.
Yeah.
And so that's where my work is. And it's based on what you said earlier. We wake up every day and we put our beliefs in automatic pilot.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever stop to think about it, and we just go to work.
That's right.
So racial bias is one of those beliefs that we put in automatic pilot. And when we go to work, we put you either in a black box or a white box.
Yep.
Once you've done that, you have harmed your client.
I agree. I'm going to pause that really quickly. What I want to do, I want to show you a really quick clip from the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and it just talks about some mental health stuff. So we're going to take we're going to look at this really quickly, and then when we're going to come back, we're going to George and I are going to chime in on that. So let's watch this clip really quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss what it is that we saw in this clip. I was excited about getting the clip. I'm just a little crazy. So let's check it out.
There are few groups who could stand to benefit from therapy more than Black people. I mean, think about all the things Black people have been through: slavery, segregation, winter, all equally traumatic experiences. But unfortunately, even as therapy has become more mainstream, the Black community has had a tough time getting the help that they need.
It's hard enough to get mental health treatment in the U.S., but studies show that racial and ethnic minorities are significantly less likely to receive mental health treatment than whites.
Black and Hispanic children are less likely to get mental health care than white kids. And studies show that irritability in the average white teenager is often labeled as depression. That same behavior is more likely to be seen as disruptive in Black or Latino children, and doctors say that can lead to feelings of hopelessness at a very young age.
Yes, one of the reasons many Black people don't get the proper treatment is misdiagnosis. What is seen as depression in white people can be seen as disruptive behavior in Black people. And this shouldn't be surprising, right? This kind of thing happens in medicine all the time, mixed diagnoses. It's like when a Black person has a seizure, it's a medical emergency. But when a white person does it, it's called dancing. But it turns out, even when Black people are properly diagnosed with mental health issues, it can still be a challenge to find a therapist who's equipped to handle their needs.
Making the crisis worse, not enough African American therapists. Today, only 4% of psychologists are Black.
Kevin Durden says admitting he needed help was actually easier than finding it. He saw 3 different therapists, but felt that none of them understood the stress and emotions unique to Black men.
When Taraji P. Henson's own son, Marcel, was struggling, she found it nearly impossible to find him one.
Trying to find a culturally competent therapist was like looking for a purple unicorn with a gold horn.
Do they understand the cultural context from which I'm coming from? Do they understand the culture that I live in?
That's right. It's extremely difficult for Black people to find a Black therapist. And it's been like this for a very, very long time. I mean, that's why Martin Luther King Jr. was always describing his dreams to huge crowds. It's just like, I had another dream that I'm being chased by bears in my underwear. Does anyone here know what that means? Now you may think that a therapist's race shouldn't matter at all, and that's true. But if you think about it, it does make sense. For many white therapists, no matter how good they are, it can be hard to understand the particular experiences of a black person. You know, just sitting there in a session, even if they're trying, it could be like, so you say people are following you around the store and you're invisible, but only the taxi drivers?
So when I look at this stuff, and you know, thanks, shout out to that show, you know, the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, some funny parts. But when you look at this, G, and you bring up all those things, man, what comes to mind for you?
I want everybody to get on their digital devices and look up the American Psychological Association Apology to People of Color. It was written and released on October 29th of 2021.
And what was that again?
The American Psychological Association's apology letter to people of color for promoting, perpetuating, and failing to challenge racism, racial discrimination, and human hierarchy in the United States.
Wow.
I just want to read just a couple initial paragraphs on it. Okay. This resolution was adopted by the American Psychological Association Council of Representatives. The American Psychological Association failed in its role leading the discipline of psychology, was complicit in contributing to systemic inequities, and hurt many through racism, racial discrimination, and denigration of people of color, thereby falling short on its mission to benefit society and improve lives. The APA is profoundly sorry, accepts responsibility for, and owns the actions and inactions of the APA itself, the discipline of psychology and individual psychologists who stood as leaders for the organization and field.
Oh, wow.
And it goes on to say it should have apologized to the people of color before today. And they have long considered such an apology, but failed to accept the responsibility. You know, they go on, and I give them props for at least writing the letter. Mm-hmm. This letter is hugely important. Number one, it's the foundation of why I'm doing the work I'm doing. I am a representative of this profession. Mm-hmm. So I can either make the choice to continue the racial status quo in my profession, or do something that is ethically obligated on my part, mm-hmm. which as a therapist, I am ethically obligated to do the work I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. We as therapists are ethically obligated to advocate at institutional and systemic levels on behalf of our clients when we discover that there are policies and practices that are proven harmful to our clients.
Yeah.
That is an actual ethical, and that one really resonated with me.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, there's a catch-22 in that.
Okay.
Advocating at systemic levels and institutions, that's politics.
Agreed.
Agreed. Bro, I don't have a political bone skill. I don't have the savvy, the knowledge. I wasn't built that way. It's a great skill, but I don't have. I was trained as a therapist.
Right.
So now here I am, a therapist, walking into these big institutions saying, "Hey, you all need to stop." They're looking at me like, "Who are you?"
Right.
I can show them my code of ethics and say, "My code of ethics says blah blah blah." They're gonna look at me and laugh me out the bill, which they have. Mm. Okay. So that's why I created this platform, because I'm ethically obligated to not harm my clients. My system is still today harming, with racial disparities, the clients we serve. So one of the fruits that have come out of this, me pushing this, is I've been developing this list of collaborators. And one of the collaborators that I'm really pleased to work with is Dr. Preston Adams. He's on
here. Good morning, Dr. Preston.
Is Doc on here?
Yeah, he's on here. He said
Okay.
morning G and Mr. G, Mr. G and Mr. G, two powerful minds. Good morning. My brother.
That sounds like a movie, man. We can make a movie, bro.
There we go.
Let's do that.
I'm with it.
So I'm really blessed to be in collaboration with him and his organization.
Sure.
He's created what's known as the Men and Mental Health Movement.
Okay.
It is powerful, man.
Okay.
The next one is March the 16th. It's held once a month on a Saturday morning, 10 to noon. Okay. All men. And what I really appreciate about it is he doesn't say black men, he says men.
Okay.
But it just goes without even having to say it. It's men of our community. But it is also inclusive of everyone else. But it is designed, remember the triage, we are the community in most urgent need of treatment.
Yeah.
And so this movement that Dr. Adams has created is a new, more culturally relevant way of addressing these systemic racial disparities that are harming the American African male the most.
Okay.
So I encourage everyone, all men of all ages, to attend the next event, which is March 16th at Amazing Grace Church, Dr. Adams Church, at 10 o'clock. Now, here's the other thing. At least come get a free breakfast. Because they feed you, man, and it is good, bro.
So I have the flyer up.
Oh, there it is.
2024 Men and Mental Health Movement Session 2. You got Dr. Dwight Holland. You got Pastor Cedric, looks like G. Wilson, Mr. Alan Archibald, and Dr. Preston T. Adams III. Saturday, March 16th, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Location, Amazing Grace Christian Church, 8100 East 16th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46219. All are welcome. So we got that flyer up, man. So shout out to Dr.
And so I brought it up to address, these systemic inequities in every area of service. But, as it pertains to mental health, as a mental health professional myself, I only represent, we are only 4% of the professional population available. So that makes it very difficult for those in need of service to find a culturally relevant service provider.
Yeah.
And, they talk about, being one of the ways that systems try to compensate for this lack of cultural relevance is they call it cultural competence training. So that's another, what am I trying to say? It's an oxymoron, so to speak.
Okay, we got a lot of those, right?
Yeah, when you're dealing with, because we're not dealing with a cultural issue. We're dealing with a racial issue. And you can be culturally competent, but racially incompetent.
Okay, I like it.
The two are not the same. And what people are doing is saying, well, if I'm culturally competent, then I'm good for everybody. So, you have people who identify as white taking some cultural competence classes or trainings, and they think they're ready to go. And actually, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are we doing with the brothers, man? When we look all around the country, we realize that, black men are man in bad shape. Number one homeless person, number one unemployed person, number one person in the jail, number one person getting killed, number one person doing the killing, broken relationships, child support, away from our kids, go to work, come home, might get cussed out. I mean, but no, real talk. It's like, man, people take it lightly. Honestly, people really look at us, and I will say this to my brothers: some bad dudes.
Yeah.
Anybody get up every single day and deal with this, and keeps doing it, is a bad man. I'm saying that bad meaning good. He's a bad dude, man. What are we doing? Because one, it's like there's such a G, the more I grew in corporate America, the less I saw me. And I'll be honest, I just had a situation where I had a interview with a sister, and she was a little older than me. I'll be honest, it was the worst interview I've ever had in my life.
Why so?
Because it was like she felt like she had to rip me to shreds for some odd reason. And I'm just like, what's happening here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is it? How do we get to a place where brothers start really getting their minds healthy?
Yes.
Because it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff just every day. And it seems like a lot of the stuff is done in the shadows. So people look, and I say this all the time, people be like, well, I remember being, hunting for jobs, and people are like, did you follow up? Did you this? All the stuff you do in theory, but they wonder why it just never pans out. Or people look at you and say, can you just be quiet? Like you have to diminish your manhood, like you shouldn't stand up for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we maneuver in this world, man, and remain mentally healthy when there are so many things that, that really, to me, push us to say either you diminish your manhood or something else. I don't know. But how do we fix this?
Yeah, excellent question. So here I want to just remind everyone to the things that I'm going to say in answer to your question. To don't look to disagree or agree. Just consider the information first. And everything that I'm going to say is factually based.
Okay.
First, just as a man, and in pertaining to our community specifically, there's 3 components that we're going to need to have to move to our desired goal.
Mm-hmm.
It is a healthy identity, a collective environment, and an independent economy.
Mm-hmm. Strong points, brother.
Okay. Because if you're a man don't ask nobody for nothing.
Preach.
Okay. Now here's the problem. We as a American African community have an identity problem.
True.
We as an American African community have a collectivity problem.
I'm hearing you.
And as an American African community, definitely have an economic problem.
For sure.
So let's start with identity.
Okay.
And this is a part where, based on where your mind is, it's going to determine how you respond.
Okay.
I said earlier, there's a difference between culture and race.
True.
And your identity is, to a human being, is like software to the computer. It serves a purpose. When we speak as Black men, and again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to, I just want to give you the facts of what we're doing. When we say Black men, that really is not a cultural identity.
Okay.
That's a racial identity.
Yes, sir. Not feeling that.
Black came from the European
Mm-hmm.
in the 1600s. He created the ideology of race. And this is what most people don't understand. That race is not genetic, it's not scientifically based, it's not factually based in any credible measure of the word. It was just an idea that the European came up with so that he justified the barbarous treatment and the first act of systemic racism in America, called the transatlantic slave trade. And race ideology gave the narrative to make other Europeans comfortable, to make them believe that the African was inferior.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That he was not human.
Yep. Animalistic. Yep.
Animalistic. And when the larger society bought that, he could then inflict his economic exploitation, because that was the true measure of it, was to deprive the African from his land, which had all of these resources that he needed.
True.
That's what this is all about.
True.
And that's the game that's still being played today.
True.
So the name he gave us was called Negro. Negro is Spanish for black.
Black, correct.
And you get in some conversations today, and some people say, I'm a Negro, and other people say, I ain't no Negro, I'm black. Now think about the idiocy of that.
True.
Okay. But because we don't know, we're having intense conversations. Don't call me Negro. Don't call me black.
That's right.
So we have an identity problem. When I do a lot of my workshops, I have a lot of people who attend who come from Nigeria or Ghana. And I hear this often, George, when I got here to America, that's the first time I learned that I was black. I didn't know I was black till I came to America. Because they never referred to themselves or even saw themselves as a skin color. They were Igbo, Yoruba,
sure,
Zulu.
Yeah.
That's culture.
Culture. Yep.
Now, a cultural identity, that's where your power is.
True that.
A cultural identity holds within it all of the stories and challenges that your people came through. And, I mean, just talking about it gets me lit up, when I start thinking about that. Personally, my grandfather is of the Yoruba tribe.
Okay.
And he was a phenomenal musician, well-known musician. Most of you here in America wouldn't know him, but he's very well known in England and Nigeria. So I get power from that.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Same here. It's crazy. Because G, I always say this, and not to cut you off, but I want you to get back to it. But I tell people here all the time, I said, you don't see our culture. And I said, culture is not once a month. Culture is not during July or June or whenever we have these events. I was like, culture lives. And if you don't see it, no, there's a problem.
Right.
I agree with that, man. So go ahead, bro. Keep going.
That's it. So because we are not identifying culturally and identifying racially, here's the thing about race. All white and black they're not cultural labels. They're labels of hierarchy.
Preach. Preach.
They're labels of hierarchy.
That's real.
In the paradigm of race, which color's on top and which color's on bottom?
That's real. We could look at it, white, black, white, angelic, peaceful, kind, black, evil, dark, destitute. But it's like all the bad things. Absolutely.
Now, people who identify as white, this information will jolt them because they say, well, but I'm not racist and I believe in equal, and I'm sure that you do. But your racial bias betrays you.
True. And
people who identify as black will say, especially those who consider themselves upwardly mobile and successful, will say, oh, race ain't got nothing on me. I'm living in Carmel. I'm driving good. I'm 6 figures. I'm good. Statistically, it just ain't so.
That's right.
Because statistically speaking, you're probably paying more for the same house on interest rate for the same house next to your white neighbor.
That's real.
You probably had to jump through more hoops as a black male compared to your white counterpart who just walked in and got his promotion without any stress whatsoever.
George, it takes me to a place where, I remember, I know a lot of black people, a lot of people who've strived to be in human resources in these corporations. And I said, how is it? This is just my mentality. I'm like, how can you be black and in HR? I said, you get to see all the disparities.
Yes.
And do nothing about it because you're handcuffed. There is no way in this world, bro, that I could be in that position to know that my brother or sister is in the same position, doing the same job as this joker over here and getting paid $30,000 less. But it happens every day.
Yeah.
That's a problem in itself.
Well, it's conditioning. It's conditioning. And that's part of the black experience.
Yeah.
There's a quote I learned at a conference I was at, and I heard this brother get up and speak, and he said this, and it always rings true. The mind cannot both survive and improve at the same time.
Say that one more time.
The mind cannot both survive and
And
improve
improve
at the
at the
same
same
time.
time. Let's unpack it.
So, statistically speaking, you know, when I'm having these conversations, I'm always coming from a collective perspective. Many of us come from our own individual perspectives, which they may be true for your individual piece, but that's more subjective. That's true for you, not necessarily for the general masses. So when I'm speaking on a collective basis.
Okay.
And statistically speaking, our community is in survival mode. I mean, again, racism is a public health crisis.
So the mind cannot survive and improve at the same time.
So if you're in survival mode, you're not thinking about anything that is going to be altruistic in nature. You're not necessarily looking to help your brother up, not necessarily, because your first instinct is to survive. And most people who've gotten to those lofty areas in their organizations, they're not comfortable. They're still trying to survive because they're usually the only one in the room.
Facts.
And they understand the politics.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. When the George Floyd situation happened, a major medical organization called me to, you know, the platform that I develop, it's called Racial Deconstruction.
Okay.
And so they called me to do some presentations there and some work with their senior leadership, work with their middle management. And when I got the call, the CEO said, "George, here's what's going on. When the George Floyd situation came out, we were in a conference meeting, team meeting, and on the day that it happened, all the white people were freely talking about the George Floyd situation, and the black managers were quiet.
Yeah,
they didn't say anything." He said, "That's not right, George." And so they hired me to come in. We did some, you know, very extensive work, and speaking like I'm speaking now, and I'm sure some of these things I'm saying is coming off sideways to many of the people that are listening. But again, it's based in fact. And so the goal with racial deconstruction is to get people to get them to understand the facts about your identity. If you believe you're white, this is what white means.
Right.
If you identify as white, you're going to do white stuff. There's just no way. And what diversity, equity, inclusion tries to do is it tries to tell people who identify as white, stop being white. And if you identify as black, you're thinking, well, the only way this is going to get better is if white people stop doing this stuff. So the person who identifies as black does not feel empowered to address his own situation.
That's real.
So the work is to unpack what white and black really means so that you can get to who you really are.
So George, when we go back in time and look at when black population was, you know, we were doing some great things. Our families were together. We were having children. We pretty much were, you know, at one point had our own ecosystem. And all of a sudden in that growth, you found that I'll say the system made white bigger because they took the Italian and said, "You're white." They took the German and said, "You're white." They took all the people that they even exiled at one point in this country. You know, when Italians was living in the slum and Polish people were living in the slums, and all of a sudden they said, well, in order for us to remain what we call the majority, we must combine all these races into one. And so you're right. And then all of a sudden, these races started doing what we say are white things, simply because they were empowered to do so.
Exactly. And that's when what you're speaking of, the average person is not aware of the history of how white was given and white was taken away.
Yeah.
And people who immigrated here applied for the status of white.
Sure. I know some people who are truly Mexican who actually have white on their identification.
That's right.
Real. People don't know that even black people in the 80s and Turks and Caicos identified as white because they gave it to them. That's wild.
That's how race survives, because you can, the people who created it can make it do anything they want it to do. The only rule that has to be adhered to is the racial status quo, the hierarchy. So for example, there's one argument that people get into about race where they say blacks can't be racist because blacks don't have the power to systemically oppress.
Yeah.
And I make a clarifier. I say this: anyone can be racist as long as it maintains the racial status quo of white supremacy.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Because even in our programs, let me tell you, even in a lot of these programs, I say, man, it's a whole lot of people believe they're trailblazing, but the only trail that they're blazing is leading back to white supremacy. They don't even see it. And it's crazy, because I'm like, does it advance us? Does it make us better? How is this helping us? And if it doesn't, then I'm like, where's the trail leading you? And it would be the equivalent of Harriet Tubman taking people in a circle and saying they're free, and then they end up on the same plantation. We do it every day.
We do it every day,
man.
So the ugly truth about this is, or the exciting opportunity that this presents, depending on how your mind is built, is it's time to get off the nipple.
Man,
it's time to get off the nipple.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Dr. Umar Johnson, who goes by Dr. Umar Ifatunde now.
That's my brother. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I just caught this TikTok this morning. I'm like, man, it's wild that I'm getting this TikTok when I'm ready to get on No Apologies. He asked the question, do you know that there is no independent Black economy run by Black people anywhere on the globe?
Nowhere.
Where
Dr. Claude Anderson on the same page.
Where is our infrastructure? He asked that question. Where's our infrastructure? Where are our institutions? He's asking that in 2024, and we're supposed to be men. I mean, we're supposed to be men. And it's what a daunting fact that not even in Africa is the economy run by Africans.
You know what? This is good, man. We gonna listen. I'm gonna tell everybody on No Apologies, please. That George is gonna become a correspondent. He's gonna be coming back. He just found it out. But I'm gonna tell you something. One person tried it, and they took him out.
And who was that person you're referring to? Marcus?
That was Muammar Gaddafi.
Oh, okay.
When he worked to try to take the currency and said, you know what, we're gonna create our own African currency. Our currency is getting off the nipple. We're gonna extend this thing to gold. We ain't fooling with nobody else. We're gonna have our own system. And when the brother did it, so goes it. It was like, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because, you know, when I think about just even, I would love for people to research it, but when you think about, you know, just how they made him to be a tyrant, and you found out all the amenities that were given to the people of Libya, you know, free education, free healthcare, a portion of the proceeds from their oil sales. If you got married, you got an allowance or a bonus. If you had children, you had bonus. If you did not attain the job that you went to school to get and you went abroad, they paid for you to stay until you got a job. And it's crazy how that became deemed as a tyrant, but that's a whole nother story. We'll have to talk about that one day. So brother, you know, we got a couple minutes, but I just want you to, you know, give the people some information on where you are, what you're doing, how to get in touch with you. And then just some key factors on where we should go to get our mental health in order.
Okay. So you can reach my website, which is George Middleton consulting.com. Okay. And there you'll find a lot of resources and services that will aid you in addressing mental health issues, and especially as it pertains to our place of inequality within this systemic environment. And you can schedule me for private sessions and presentations and workshops and networks. So it's all there on the website. I'm doing several collaborations. Again, I mentioned the Men in Mental Health movement. You all need to support that. Greg, you said a couple on several shows. Y'all don't support. Y'all don't support us. We don't support us.
Yeah.
Look, guys, this Men in Mental Health movement, it's getting ready to really shake some doors. You need to be there. Mm-hmm. I'm also working with the Peace Learning Center.
Okay. Tim
Nation is the executive director there. And we're collaborating on issues of inequality and mental health.
Okay.
I'm also collaborating with the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee. And there's an initiative there called Reimagining Race. So get on their website and become part of that movement. So you can catch me on any of these platforms. And, I hope to be back on your show to talk more about it. This is a process, guys. Everything begins with thought. As a man thinketh.
Yeah.
As a man thinketh. Yeah. If you think you are a skin color, you're going to get, I always say racial thinking only and always gets racial outcomes.
Yeah.
And racial outcomes are never inclusive. Racial outcomes are never equal. And they are never diverse.
Yeah.
So you're just not going to get that from racial thinking. If we're going to move our community to the next level, we're going to have to work outside of the racial paradigm. And I teach that.
And and before we go, I mean, we got time, but before we go, what do you believe the next level is for us?
We have to transition from our a racial to a cultural paradigm of thought. Yes, and I like the analogy you use. You do this.
Yeah. Yep.
5 fingers.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
That is in direct correlation with Dr. Claude Anderson's 5 floors.
Mm-hmm.
And the first floor being economic base.
Yeah.
Then it's the political.
Yeah.
Then it's judicial. Then it's media, which you are a leader in.
Thank you, sir.
And then there's education. Everything starts on the first floor, economic base, independent economic base. That's not an economic base is not getting a job working for somebody else. That's True. Not an economic base.
That's real. Because it can be taken away from you.
For your collective community, and that Dr. Claude Anderson says that the definition of a community is one where you get 95% of your quality of life needs met within your community before you go out.
That's right.
And what we've been doing is thinking that education was going to get us our wealth. No. Wealth gets you wealth.
That's right.
Education gets you in debt.
That's right. That's right.
So you got to flip that. Start with your economic base. So until we get off the nipple and say, you know what, we're going to create our own independent infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that's a mindset change.
That is a mindset.
It's a sacrifice.
Sure.
But we're already sacrificing. We just don't know we're bleeding out. We're bleeding out.
Yeah. Okay. We're sacrificing for the greater good of someone else and not ourselves. Yeah.
Right. So that those 5 floors. So you take that money from your economic base, and now you have economic influence on the second floor, which is politics.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now we're using a moral framework in politics. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. Politicians don't care about what's right.
That's real.
They care about what's the money behind it.
That's right.
And if you want American politicians to represent our community, they got to have money to do that.
That's real.
Then from there, you're able to influence the judicial policies and the judicial treatment. And then from there, this is Dr. Claude Anderson's prescription. Media, and I heard you say this on a couple of shows, that is a strong, influential tool, and we're letting too many other groups control our narrative.
Ooh. Man, listen, I'm gonna tell you this, G. It's like, first of all, thank you. I'm gonna say this. This guy, this brother he's just been my brother for a long time. And when I called him, when I reached out to him, it was like no hesitation. Let me tell you something. Owning your own media is so important. And from me looking at this thread, I know how important it is, because people are like, brother, what I'm getting today is so important, you know? But here's the rub, and I'm gonna say this publicly. When I reach out to us, it's like pulling teeth. Bro, come to the show. Brother, you know, a dude, you know, but if it was 59, 13, 8, 4, and channel 6, no hesitation. No hesitation. We'll run to their media with no hesitation to be open and wide open as possible. But when it comes down to us sharing and being on our own, it's always a level of hesitation. So it's like we got to be better agents of supporting the things that support us. And so, man, I appreciate you coming on, bro.
And brother, real quick, and I know you're trying to roll off. I used to be that guy that you just described.
Yeah.
Until I started doing this work. And so I always try to come from a non-judgmental perspective.
Yeah.
But we've all those things you just said that we do, we've been conditioned to do. It's not because we're bad people.
Sure.
We've been conditioned to do.
Sure.
And so when I started doing this work, I realized that I was a multiple violator against my own people.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to change the way that I'm thinking so that I treat people better than what I was doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And it's a process. It's a process. And it's again, it's a journey, not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still have to watch myself because we're in a racial environment. And a racial environment tells you, or it's trying to make you believe you are Black. And if you believe you're Black, there's nothing but negative connotations associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do Black stuff. All these things that you talked about. We don't support each other. We don't spend money in our community. We don't vote. We don't, you know, all these things, you know, it's all because of our mental conditioning. And if we want to change behaviors, we're going to have to change this first.
That's real. Man, it's been our brother, George Middleton, man. I appreciate you so much, brother. I look forward to collaborating with you, having you back, having these stimulating, mind-boggling just conversations, man. You are an awesome brother, man, and I appreciate you so much, man. Have a good one. I will definitely be in touch with you soon, man. Thank you for coming to No Apologies, Please, brother. Thank you. Have a good one, G.
It was a pleasure.
No doubt. Peace. So, man, that was man, just what can I say? You know, this is why we do it. This is truly why we do it. And I even just talking to G, man, it's just such a plethora of information. And I'm glad that brother was able to come on and share with us, because when it's all said and done, you know, this platform is about not just continue. This is about opening up to a degree on educating our people on things that we may not even know about. So that's why I do the work and find the guests that I believe will bring something to the show that will add value to our community on an everyday basis. Tomorrow's guest, we're going to learn about what it means to be a trustee. We're going to have the Pike Township trustee Annette Johnson on the show tomorrow. And we're going to really chop it up. I believe that on Friday we may have brother Dr. David Hampton from LISC on the show. So I'm working out some stuff with him. And then I'm going to do a taping tonight with a gentleman, just a historian, and I'll give you the information on that tomorrow. But I'm going to do a taping tonight with a brother, and I'll surprise y'all with him on a taping. And so, man, without further ado, we'll just get to our really quickly. We'll get to our verse of the day, and then we'll just end it out, man. The verse of the day is Proverbs 23:7, and George brought it out. It says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee." So when George was like, "So a man thinketh, so is he," let me tell you, man, you know, with this show, just getting our minds right, being mentally fit, being able to step up and be, you know, when George just admitted, I was this to my own people. I wasn't doing right by my own people. The conditioning that takes place in our minds when we believe that we are being successful, or what it even means to find success. You find that we typically do stuff that does not feed into our cultural value. It does not feed into the future of our people. It feeds into the individual. And most of the stuff we do, we think is right. But I'm telling you, most of the stuff we do, again, when I say most of us, we believe we have trailblazers, but most of us are blazing trails that lead us back to white supremacy. And so a man thinketh, so is he. And if I have to believe, that's why I say I'm not inferior to anyone. I'm not a minor to anyone. I am not a minority. At the end of the day, if you don't look at yourself as major, you will always operate in the minor. And so I just urge us to be better thought agents, better people with our minds. Control, protect your brain. Protect from what you watch, what you listen to, what you're around. Protect your mind. It is so important for us to be better agents of doing so. And I believe when we get on the path of protecting our minds and thinking correctly, we'll fall right in line being the people that we're chosen to be. This has been your brother, man. I've had a great time today. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We're going to have Annette Johnson on the show. This has been No Apologies. Please have a great Wednesday. Peace.